Before we dive into the teams yet again, though, neither of these can be the underdog within the series. So much experience. It's like two Goliaths facing off against each other. Of course, Emilio within the Masters division, so many accomplishes to his name. Carson St. Denis, I mean, a throwback. We've gotten to see this kid way back. Senior champion, 2016 Columbus. 10 years later competing, obviously the skill is just so high still. Even earlier on in the season, top 4 at Vegas. A top opportunity to one-up that.
Yeah, I mean, already the second top 4 at a regional this season. Very few players managed to accomplish that over the course of the season. So an impressive run, no doubt. So many championship points for either player, probably going to see them at the World Championship. But that's all way out of the future. Right now, they've got a semifinal up against each other.
And we had highlighted these are both Tailwind teams, but kind of different variations of them. So having seen both of these teams previously on broadcast, what are you eyeing up with Carson's team to try and take this win?
Well, you have to be certain, basically, that both players are going to bring their Prankster Tailwind Pokemon. So that occupies one of the 4 spots. It feels like Ogerpon is quite valuable here as well. Can put out pretty good damage into a range of Pokemon, especially, if into the Chi-Yu, for example, if it was brought. Meanwhile, like Golden Go seems like it has a much more difficult time. Chi-Yu, Landorus, Fluttermane on the other side. These are not the Pokemon that Golden Go wants to fight against. And we've seen a lot of these Tailwind mirrors boil down to, well, if we're both going to have Tailwind, then who's faster afterwards? And Golden Go quite bad at that, probably the slowest of the Pokemon. Regidrago also has some difficulty with that, but it has a much, both these Pokemon can have big capitalizations, but if Regidrago can get Dragon Energies off, they can pick up so much damage. And I think the Ogerpon is also valuable for that reason, because it can use Follow Me to buy that one turn. We haven't seen in these Tailwind mirrors players opt to actually bring their Incineroars yet, but I wonder if this could be the chance to slow things down a little bit against Emilio's team.
Something you highlighted was for these Tailwind teams that once you set up the Tailwind, then what with sort of that speed, right? And that's going to be where we see a little bit of a difference with the Whimsicott in comparison to the Tornadus. Because Emilio, you want speed, you want a little extra more Tailwind, Icy Wind, you have some options. And well, just inherent speed with a couple of these Pokemon.
Right, has some fast Pokemon out there, though, of course, that is, we saw earlier a booster special attack Fluttermane, so not getting extra speed there. But we did see in Emilio's Tailwind mirror on stream, it was the Icy Wind in Game 3 that gave him the extra bit of speed advantage to close that out. And like the Incineroar on the other side, he's got the Amoonguss to play at a different pace and buy some space. We did see that consistently in the Tailwind mirror previously, but that was because there was a Choice Scarf Urshifu on the other side that was a problem. No Choice Scarf Urshifu this time, just Mystic Water Urshifu, so a little bit less of a threat to things like the Fluttermane and the Chi-Yu. But Chi-Yu may have a pretty difficult time, doesn't like fighting against Urshifu and Ogerpon on the other side.
What about the Amoonguss? Because that's for something where Emilio going up against another Tailwind team slowed it down in the game 2 with the Amoonguss, and that offered so much pressure. Is that something we can see within this match?
Right, so without the Choice Scarf on the Urshifu on the other side and just the Mystic Water instead, I think it has a little bit less of a risk that the Urshifu runs you over, so it's not as crucial a piece, would still definitely be impactful. The other problem is that with Ogerpon over there, it's not for certain redirection, because if you're having to redirect an Ogerpon, well, that's not going to work with Rage Powder.
Okay, instead we're going to get double Genies coming out from Emilio to start things out, and opposing other end. A lot of pressure. We get an Incineroar that offer a little bit of fake out on one of these Pokemon, but that Cornerstone Ogerpon, I mean, the Rock type has been the talk of the weekend.
Right, can threaten a bunch of damage into the Tornadus on the other side. And this is one of the dynamics we saw in earlier Tailwind mirrors. Only one player opting to immediately have Tailwind accessible to them. So Emilio has Tornadus for Prankster Tailwind, but do you risk getting a Tailwind now that might have an Ivy Cudgel and maybe like an Ivy Cudgel Flare Blitz double up back that could risk you just losing Tornadus no matter what? Because if you're not certain that you can withstand Carson's delayed Tailwind, then that could be a big problem. Otherwise, also Fake Out can just stymie the Landorus for a turn, make sure the Earth Power, which is quite a big damage threat into either of these Pokemon, isn't immediately available for Emilio.
Well, Cornerstone Ogerpon not going to go on the offensive at all. Sure, there is the threat, but it's going to be replaced with Carson's own Tailwind setter of this Whimsicott. Terastallization on the very first turn, though. There was the threat of a powerful attack from the Ogerpon and enough of it present to force the Terastallization out early on Emilio's end with the Steel typing on that Tornadus. Preservation was key and really eyeing that up. But it's not going to be the only Terastallization. Carson as well, the Water type on the Incineroar.
So many Terastallizations used early, you've got to be worried about the early pressure. So it's an Ivy Cudgel from Carson's side forcing a Steel Terastallization on Tornadus, and it's an Earth Power from Emilio's side forcing a Water Terastallization on Incineroar.
No Tailwind yet, instead going for the other way of getting that speed with this Icy Wind to drop the speed over on the Incineroar. Sandsear Storm to target down both. Whimsicott's down to just under half, but Incineroar Terastallization comes up huge, and it was never the Ogerpon going on the offensive. Terastallization's forced out, and Flare Blitz, super effective, picks up the one-hit KO.
Yeah, I mentioned pairing the Ivy Cudgel with the Flare Blitz to create a pen and force a KO. Well, sometimes you don't need to create a pen. Just call your opponents out. Say that you are going to Terastallize. You know, it still would have been pretty reasonable damage into a Tornadus that stayed flying type, but so much more impactful when it's Terastallization spent from Tornadus and no Tailwind used yet either, right? So this is going to be one-sided Tailwind in this match. It was just Icy Wind on that last turn, and Icy Wind into one, a Covert Cloak, so no speed mitigation, and to an Incineroar that really doesn't care about it. But he did spend the Water Terastallization on Incineroar to make sure that the Flare Blitz could actually come through. Otherwise, it would have been a bigger risk with the Landorus on the other side.
So much dedicated to trying to keep this Tornadus around. No Tailwind spent, opting for that other speed control, and now all of it's gone awry. But with this Urshifu hitting the field, can try and target use that to get great momentum.
Right, the downside to this for Carson is a pretty weak position. You don't really want your Whimsicott next to your Incineroar. Those are two non-threatening Pokemon, and so while you've taken the first KO and created the potential for future advantage from Tailwind, at the moment you don't have much going for you. So you're kind of hoping to get this Tailwind up and then lose some Pokemon to create the situation to actually capitalize on it.
I mean, it looks like you are going to lose some Pokemon because Whimsicott, you get the Tailwind and you instantly get taken out with the Sludge Bomb. So Emilio to take a KO on this turn, looking for a follow-up as well. Close combat into the Incineroar. Sure, Terra's there, but so low health, it will be a double, but Carson, you have the speed on your own side.
Yeah, we've seen these games play out this way before, where someone gets the early KO but creates such a weak position for themselves that they give up 2 KOs. But if you give up 2 KOs to get 2 new Pokemon in with a fresh and unanswered, unmatchable trick Tailwind, then maybe that's all you need. You're going to have Ogerpon and Urshifu in this unmatched Tailwind ready to go out on the offense. Defensive Terastallization already used from Emilio, so it looks like it's as easy as Urshifu, Surging Strikes at Landorus, Ogerpon, Grass move into the Urshifu on the other side, but there's a Focus Sash on that Urshifu over there that is one last obstacle for Carson to clear, and an obstacle when you're down to 2 Pokemon can be a lot.
There's the Focus Sash. There is also a 4th Pokemon that we haven't seen from Emilio's end. Depending on what that is, that can shift the dynamic of the match a lot. If it's something offensive, that could hurt. But if it is the Amoonguss, could be good. No pivot, though. So instead, we're playing this out how it is. The first hit into the Urshifu doesn't do too much. Landorus going to be KO'd by the end of this turn. Surging Strikes, it stands no chance since Emilio already used that Terastallization. And now we get to find out the 4th Pokemon and if it has any sort of staying power within this match.
Before the 4th Pokemon, though, this Urshifu's going to get to swing out with close combat, take Ogerpon down to 1 HP. So Carson is down to 1 HP and 1 Pokemon. And you can see Carson maybe confidence, maybe a little bit unwillingness to click the Power Whip there, maybe predicting a switch or just not wanting to get the miss. And so instead, Ivy Cudgel swings into that Urshifu, but it is an Urshifu with an Aqua Jet that can now just swing out and take that KO. No speed advantage is going to save you from that. No Spiky Shield is going to save you from that. Now, the answer then is Urshifu with its own Aqua Jet from Carson's side. You can just try to swing out first, but because you didn't actually get it down to Focus Sash with the Power Whip on the previous turn and just Ivy Cudgel, that option's not there, so you just have to give up this Aqua Jet.
Yeah, and that means giving up your Ogerpon as well, only on 1 HP. Now, Carson just one Pokemon on this turn. One Pokemon that will be able to equalize the score quite quickly, though. Fluttermane hit the field, and again, just instantly taken out. We are going down to an Urshifu versus Urshifu endgame. But again, difference with how much damage has been done on to these Pokemon.
Yeah, the Urshifu on Emilio's side already weakened, should be in range for close combat. Carson's most likely bulky enough and also has the speed advantage, so it should be Carson's game now. The Fluttermane unable to get an attack off, so yeah, Emilio just concedes this game, sees the writing on the wall with an incoming close combat from Carson's Urshifu. Another rapid fire game, just a handful of turns to close that one out.
And I mean, we started that match off with a big turn and big shift of momentum coming out from Carson's end. We had highlighted the importance of the Tailwind Pokemon and, I mean, from Emilio, that preservation, but Carson did such a good job in baiting out that Terastallization, instantly taking the KO. And Emilio, from the get-go, was playing from behind.
Right, and it is that unmatched Tailwind that was the big problem. If Emilio's Flutter Mane had hit the field in matched Tailwind, well, you're not so worried about Surging Strikes on the other side. You're just going to throw a Moonblast or a Dazzling Gleam out at the Urshifu and be quite happy with this situation. Your Landorus would be moving before the Urshifu, not going down to the Surging Strikes, but getting big damage off. But because Emilio just got an Icy Wind out of that first turn and then immediately lost his Tornadus, that was, you know, the flaw that led to so many problems for Flutter Mane and Landorus down the way.
So then this is where we can talk adjustments going into this next game, because yeah, that was a tough lead, because even as you called out the combination of the Ivy Cudgel and the Flare Blitz, well then either way, Terra or not, that's Tornadus isn't having a good time. So then where do you adjust for Emilio?
Well, you have to be really thoughtful about when you're playing these kinds of high octane mirrors, you have to be really thoughtful about the risk you take when you don't click Tailwind. If you don't click Tailwind and the damage comes in and KOs your Tailwind setter so that you never get to click Tailwind, then that's devastating. These games, though, can be so short that even like the risk of offset Tailwinds might not be a big problem. I'm not sure that Emilio's Tailwind would have ever expired if he clicked it on turn 1 of that last game. So I think you've got to be very careful. I think in that position, he thought he was probably safe enough, wasn't going to go down to an Ivy Cudgel, didn't factor in how likely Carson was to go for a Flare Blitz and how much of an uphill battle it'd be afterwards. He might be a little bit more conservative this time, still with those 2 Genies on the other side, and still with the Incineroar on Carson's side, but now Urshifu changing it up a little bit, offering some damage threat into Landorus instead. This gives it kind of a different look. This is once again Tailwind versus no Tailwind, but what you're offering is, are you going to take a Tailwind while I just like fake out and Surging Strikes Landorus and threaten a KO there? Or are you going to immediately play more defensively or try to swing out an offense with Tornadus, but then once again risk not getting that match Tailwind? A very tricky position that Carson has offered Emilio here.
And it is going to be fake out, so yeah, Landorus not going to do much. Tornadus left alone though, a lot of damage in that Urshifu. Now,
a lot of damage in Urshifu, but where is the Urshifu targeting?
That's going to be the big question. No Terastallization, Surging Strikes into that Tornadus. Eyeing this up, it looks like it's going to be enough, which does mean, yet again, Tornadus has gone down without setting up a Tailwind.
So once again, Emilio sees that risk, but is willing to take it. Doesn't Tailwind on the first turn, sees the fake out go into Landorus, gets some good damage back, but that damage is not going to be worth the unmatched Tailwind. You have to presume that Whimsicott is one of those 2 unrevealed Pokemon for Carson, and so at some point, there's going to be Tailwind advantage. But like the last game, before that happens, you have this moment of like negative position for Carson. The Incineroar and the Urshifu are in a terrible position here. You can try to like get an Aqua Jet into Landorus or something, but you're immediately under so much threat of just Earth Power into Urshifu, Surging Strikes into Incineroar. You've got to recover from it somehow. And unlike the last game, I don't think you can recover from it by just allowing 2 KOs, because you don't want Whimsicott to be one of your final 2 Pokemon. You can recover from it with 2 KOs if that's after the Whimsicott gets a Tailwind up.
I mean, we're going to see the switch from Carson. As said, not as much staying power with those 2 Pokemon. It's not going to be Whimsicott onto the field, though. Instead, this Regidrago to join the fray. Terastallization on the second turn of this match. Going on into it, it will be into this Landorus, scared of the potential of something like a Surging Strikes from the Urshifu that's no longer here. So again, Terastallization forced out from Emilio. A Terastallization that's going to be matched though. Incineroar, it sticks around, and knowing that there is the threat of a Surging Strikes or a close combat from the opposing end, trying to mitigate that damage as much as possible.
Earth Power, Close Combat, Surging Strikes, you've mitigated all of them with a Water Terastallization, so it makes a lot of sense, but for now it's just Sandsear Storm and Incineroar dodges, and Regidrago dodges.
It's a double miss! You needed to get as much damage as possible, and that miss is going to be the difference between Incineroar sticking around or not. Incineroar stays around, U-turn, gets to pivot out, and already what wasn't a great board state from Emilio just gets worse. Now, you talked about not wanting a free hit switch into the Whimsicott, but U-turn is going to allow Carson to get in this Whimsicott and still keep all his Pokemon.
This is the dream. Carson couldn't ask for more. It was in that negative position, and it manages to navigate to Whimsicott, threatening Tailwind next to Regidrago, threatening a ton of damage. A KO into either Landorus or the Urshifu, most likely, with Earth Power going into Landorus or just Dragon offense into the Urshifu. And gets to it with almost no cost because of that double Sandsear Storm dodge. If those hit instead, then Regidrago is relatively low. Incineroar is knocked out. Maybe you're still okay with it because Incineroar gets knocked out, you replace it with Whimsicott, you can still threaten Tailwind and Earth Power, but you pay so much higher of a cost. After those 2 misses, though, this looks much more comfortable for Carson, but still not over because you can't threaten both KOs at once. Because you need to get Tailwind, you can threaten like a Moonblast into the Urshifu, but that just would mean Landorus gets to go out unguarded. But for now, Landorus is protecting. Emilio trying to make a call of where Carson will target this turn.
Just trying to have a little bit of survivability, take it down, do as much damage as possible with this Urshifu. Earth Power is going to call that out, so Regidrago does nothing. Single target force into the Landorus for Protect. Now, trying to take as much momentum as possible. Close combat brings Regidrago down real low, but notably too, now your special defense is going to suffer for that, making you much more susceptible in this next turn.
Yeah, now you are just threatened by Moonblast plus Earth Power. So Emilio takes a big risk there to try to mitigate any offense from Carson on that turn. He could have guaranteed 1 attack, but instead risks it and still gets the 1 attack without taking damage in, but it doesn't perfectly improve the position because now you're just threatened by 2 KOs. Landorus forced to switch, knowing that Earth Power is coming. We're going to find out what Emilio's last Pokemon is, what can take that Earth Power. Amoonguss, pretty good option to take it, but you start to wonder where the damage is coming. For now, Detect is going to keep Urshifu safe on this turn.
Yeah, at this point, we know there's only 2 damage dealers left on Emilio's team, and you got to preserve them as much as possible. Protect with the Urshifu, Earth Power into the Amoonguss, but as said, isn't going to be too much damage out on this turn. Notably, too, Regidrago is on a timer with the amount of damage that's already taken. It looks like 3 Life Orbs?
2 Life Orbs,
2 Life Orbs.
We can see the number Emilio can't, so we can know confidently that that is 2 more attacks that will KO Regidrago. Meanwhile, Whimsicott is still threatening Moonblast into the Urshifu. Rage Powder is not going to protect you from Grass-type Whimsicott going out on the offense, but what can protect you is just a further switch into Landorus. Yeah. So now a Steel-type would take that pretty comfortably. Regidrago, you can't Dragon Energy at this point. You're way too low in health, so you don't have spread offense. You've got to make some call with where that damage is going. So you can throw a big Draco Meteor at Amoonguss, but that can just protect. You could end up with 3 turns in a row of like your main offense just going into a protect. It's not really forward progress from Emilio. You're just cycling through the Pokemon, but so far Carson hasn't been able to capitalize on these positions.
And is called out Detect on the last turn. Urshifu so susceptible to a hit. Landorus comes on in. And of course, if you're worried about the Moonblast, it's going to be fun, but we got to see those double up into it. Amoonguss goes for the Protect, trying to call out Carson, targeting down that Pokemon. Whimsicott instead trying to lock down a Pokemon, but Earth Power does target into the freshly swapped in Landorus. Landorus holds on though with just a sliver of health, so it's barely holding on, but it's still there.
I really like that play from Carson to recognize that he was getting trapped in this constant cycle. The Moonblast was so telegraphed, the Landorus switch was so telegraphed, and so calls it out with Earth Power, but it's not actually enough damage. Landorus just barely able to hang on, and unlike Regidrago, which is going to KO itself with its next Life Orb recoil, Sheer Force is going to protect that Landorus. It's going to stay around and attack as long as it wants, but the problem is still the speed. Moonblast is a threatened KO still there. Even as a Steel type, you're way too low. Rage Powder still can't save you. Whimsicott is still moving first, so you're once again just having to protect. Emilio not able to really find opportunities to swing out because he's constantly under pressure because of that unmatched Tailwind. So yeah, Amoonguss just does a switch, does not want to take a Draco Meteor on this turn, maybe hoping to get the drop under Regidrago and take Draco Meteors in the future, but it's too much. It's going too slowly for Emilio.
I mean, these last few turns from Emilio have been just not losing out on this match, trying to prolong this as much as possible. Looks like a little bit of prolong here as, of course, Moonblast into the protecting Pokemon, but Draco Meteor into the other slot, which was an Amoonguss, instead is an Urshifu that goes down. So Emilio, 1 Pokemon saved, another sacrificed, only 2 left.
Only 2 left, but can Amoonguss beat these 2 Pokemon? Whimsicott and Urshifu are terrible at dealing with Amoonguss. An Amoonguss that's now at full health, an Amoonguss that has Sludge Bomb to go after the Whimsicott. Like, Amoonguss might be all you need. The Incineroar at such low health, it maybe depends on how fast it is. If you can get any, if you avoid a Flare Blitz into Amoonguss, this is just definitely Emilio's game. This has gotten much more close than I would have expected.
Thing with the Incineroar hitting the field, though, that makes this awkward is, of course, you do get that priority with the Fake Out in a Landorus that is just on a sliver of health. Or you can just go for the big play, double protect. So Emilio goes for it, but it looks like Carson's covering for it. 1 and 3 that the Landorus would stay safe past that turn, but Encore never targeting down. Instead, Incineroar on the offense, eyes up this Amoonguss and brings it down to just Landorus against the world. Great call coming out from Carson. That could have been a double protect to save Emilio the match, but instead, it is the final nail in the coffin as Carson is 1 HP away from wrapping up this match and finding himself in the finals.
So many close damage rolls, but that one, whether it was close or not, it was enough. It gets the KO onto Amoonguss, solves that problem in one fell swing. Flare Blitz gets the KO.
And with that, only 1 HP on Landorus. The match is done. Carson, St. Denis, 2-0, and one more match to try and become your champion. Someone with a wealth of experience in the game, going up against such an accomplished trainer in Emilio. But what a set coming on out, and such a strong set as well. It's got to feel so confident after that one.